Hey friends, it's time for another Playwright tip, and today we will discuss this friend here, page.goto. That's probably included in all your Playwright scripts. And we will discuss why it's probably slowing down your end-to-end tests. Does this sound good? Let's go. As always, let's look at an example script. Here we have a login script that navigates to the root of a base URL that I defined in my Playwright config. Then it is looking for a login link to click it. Then it's waiting for a header to be visible. Then it fills out a login form, and then it expects a certain message to be visible on the page. This is a pretty common Playwright test. If you have seen this friend here, add locator handler, and you don't know what this is about, check out this video because it's pretty cool to click away modals and things that could randomly interrupt your Playwright tests. So let's kick off Playwright's UI mode with npx playwright test --UI to see if this test actually works. Here we have the Playwright UI, and here is our login test case. So let's hit play to see what it does. So Playwright is now navigating to /, but you already see that it's taking quite a little bit until it continues, even though the film strip here shows us that the page seems to be ready. But it still goes on and it fills out this login form, and then it expects that this login welcoming message here is visible. So far so good. But why did this page.goto call take so long? To find an answer, we can inspect the network panel here of the Playwright UI, and we can look at all the resources that have been loaded. And when we watch closely, we will find that here is a logo, an image that is very unimportant for our test case that took exactly 10 seconds to load. And it delayed our page.goto call. Let's find out how page.goto actually works. When you call page.goto, you can pass also an additional config object. Here we see that I'm passing waitUntil commit to this page.goto call. Commit in this case means that Playwright only waits for the first bytes to come in and will move on to your Playwright instructions. It's similar to what you see when you type in a URL in the URL bar and look at a blank screen for a second. Then we could also wait for domcontentloaded, which means that now the browser parsed your entire HTML and is waiting for scripts that either have the deferred attribute or are ECMAScript modules. So in this case, you see that checkthehq.com is a Next.js site, and it would wait for all the Next.js JavaScript files to be loaded. And now it gets interesting. There's also the waitUntil configuration, which is pretty much the default when you call page.goto. And this one will wait for pretty much anything included in the page. This could be images, third-party scripts, or whatever is loaded in your page. And the question is, do you really need these when you're running your Playwright tests? And then, just for completeness, there's also wait until network idle, which means that Playwright will wait until the network becomes silent for another 500 milliseconds. And this method is pretty much discouraged because you're opening up Pandora's box. Because maybe you're loading a JavaScript snippet that then loads another JavaScript snippet, which then loads another one. You see where we're going here. You can never be sure how long page.goto will take when you will use wait until network idle. So here we have the answer. Because we were not passing any additional configuration to our page.goto call, when we looked at UI mode, Playwright was waiting for all the resources in the page to be loaded, and that took 10 seconds. But now that we know about other wait until options, does that mean that we could tweak our Playwright script and make it faster? Let's find out. As we've learned, when we call page.goto without any additional arguments, this pretty much means that we are waiting for the load event. So let me head over to my terminal, run this test case, and find out how long it will take when we wait for all the resources for the slow image to be loaded. Let's go. And I will fast forward so that we're not waiting the entire time. So when we're waiting for all the resources to be loaded, this test case roughly takes 17 seconds. Let's make it faster, shall we? Let's go for commit first. And let's run this test case again. And this test case now takes 7 seconds. We just cut off 10 seconds of our Playwright end-to-end test. And let's go for domcontentloaded. And let's run it again. Here we go. We are also roughly at 7 seconds. WaitUntil, commit, and domcontentloaded are very close to each other here right now because I'm testing a local site. When you're testing a site that is in the real internet with some real network in between, these numbers shouldn't be as close to each other. But you might now say, hold on, Stefan, how does Playwright know when the site is loaded? And the answer to that is, it doesn't, and it doesn't care. When you rely on Playwright best practices such as auto-waiting, here, for example, this click will wait for this element to be visible on the page, it doesn't need to care if JavaScript is hanging around. If this element is there and it's functioning, it will click it. Similarly, when you're using web-first assertions, you can always say, hey, I don't care what's happening in the network. I don't care about implementation details. I just want to wait until this element is visible. So when you rely on auto-waiting and you're adopting the approach of testing UI, defining UI state, defining actions, and then expecting other UI state, it doesn't matter if you go for commit or for domcontentloaded. Your tests should still work, unless your site comes with poor UX and poor hydration patterns. So what are these? Unfortunately, it's very common these days to ship UI that looks functional but isn't, so that you're rage clicking on a button and nothing is happening until JavaScript is loaded. But let me tell you something, your users don't know what requests are hanging around. And if you present UI that looks functional, they will click it. And this is exactly what Playwright does. It's a very common Playwright is too fast case. Playwright isn't too fast. You're just shipping UI that looks functional and is not, and your users are having the same problems. What's a better approach then? When you're delivering placeholders while waiting for some AJAX calls, your Playwright tests with auto-waiting will just work because they will interact with your UI whenever it's there. Similarly, you could also disable your forms when they're not ready yet, even though this has some other UX implications. But this will just work with auto-waiting because Playwright will not fill your input fields when they're disabled. And when you think of your users, you could also just show a loading spinner and wait for this one in your Playwright scripts to disappear. Sure, you have to tweak your Playwright script then a little bit, but you're improving your UI because it's then showing what is going on. And this improves the experience of your apps and sites because it will always happen that some requests will be stuck in the network. So should you now go ahead and change all your go-to calls to wait until domcontentloaded, to wait for your own scripts, or even commit to not wait for the network when loading pages at all? I would say it depends. When you use Playwright to test your preview and staging environments, I think your tests should be as fast as possible. So whenever it's possible and your UI and websites allow it, bet on auto-waiting and go for domcontentloaded or commit. But when you're using Playwright for synthetic monitoring, there can be quite some value in watching out for the network too. As an example, here we are in our Checkly dashboard that shows us how we at Checkly use Playwright and Checkly to test and monitor all our web properties. And here we have 5 Playwright checks that are running on a schedule from around the globe to check that checklyhq.com is all right. So we could now change all these Playwright scripts running on a schedule, monitoring our production environment, to be as fast as possible and not take the network into consideration, but it's kind of missing the point. Because we're monitoring production here, we want to be on the safe side, and we want to know when there are third parties, when there are resources that are taking ages to load, so that our scripts or our Playwright tests will run into timeouts. So it's the usual it depends. And that's it, we made it. Let me know if you saved some time in your CI/CD pipelines by adjusting your go-to calls, and if you have any questions or comments, drop them below. Also, make sure to check our Playwright tips playlist here on YouTube, because we already have over 30 videos and we're not gonna stop. And with that, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you very, very soon again.